Vegas on the screen, feeling the flow, so pristine. Boom, as the beats align, electric dreams, they intertwine. Neon dreams in the digital stream. Lights flash to the sound, surreal extreme. Feel it. In the heart of Vegas, we're living the scene.
All right, welcome on into the Gameday Huddle, off and running. No Jimmy Garino, but do not worry, because 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Brett Lawson, Steve Johnson is here, and we are off and ready to go. And Steve, man, last week when we were in studio talking shop, and Jimmy obviously was supposed to be here, but Jimmy has priorities. We have a brand new Game Day sports cards operation opened up. It went down, the launch went down this weekend. Our old buddy of the show, Michael Lugo, was there. I saw some social media coverage, if you will. Seemed it was pretty smooth. I know, man, you know, and Steve, you could probably give some anecdotes to how it really went, but I'm just going on from the outside looking in. But obviously, we're happy about everything going on the Game Day sports card front. But Steve, when we were in studio last week talking shop, so much of the conversation was how would this, as we were previewing the NBA Finals, Oklahoma City and Indiana, how would this look through 2 games? And here we are on a Monday. Game 1 and Game 2 are in the books, and they are 2 completely, albeit both, very interesting games to go off of. Of course, Indiana with the epic Game 1 comeback, something you can make the case shouldn't have happened, but hey, that seems to be their MO, because the Game 1 comeback against the Knicks in the Eastern Conference Finals, for all intents and purposes, shouldn't have happened either. Yet Pacers go up 1-0, and of course Oklahoma City comes back in dominant fashion in Game 2 to even things up as they head back to Indy for Game 3. So just before we break down what we've seen in particular, Steve, just some general thoughts. What is your takeaway through 2 games? Because there's a lot to unpack just off of 2 installments here.
That Oklahoma City was a game late to the discussion that we had about what the potential game plan should be.
Yep.
Because, as we mentioned, they're not as deep as Oklahoma City is.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
and
clear.
That shows.
That's
That's
clear.
very, very obvious.
Mm-hmm.
And what they did in Game 2 was, okay, we dare you to find someone else.
Yeah.
And when you do that, and look, Halliburton is an explosive player. I think he's a great player.
He's one man.
I want to say, you know, when you start looking at guys, can you put him in front of 10 other people if you were building a franchise right now? And I don't know that you do. I don't know that Halliburton becomes in that top 10 of players being picked.
Like it's a foundation.
Because you'd be taking Luka, you'd be taking Giannis, you go down the list here, Anthony Edwards,
Gilgeous-Alexander.
Shai. Right, there's 4 already. And we haven't even started talking about and I know he's hurt, the Jason Tatums and
Jokic.
You know, Jokic.
Yep.
I mean, there's 6, right? So by the time we get there, I don't think he's a top 10 guy in the league. I think he's a very good player, probably falls in that top 25. And if he falls outside of that top 10, is that guy going to create enough of his own shots, produce a lot of his own things, make a lot of his own stuff happen, right?
Well, and I think, not to cut you off, I think maybe that's what we're seeing. Maybe he is not the guy. And, you know, this year in the NBA, it is a little bit different because I know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was the MVP, but Oklahoma City, they play team basketball. Indiana plays team basketball.
Yes.
We have become so accustomed to, whether it be big threes, whether it be superstars, of guys being able to backpack a team, and this team isn't built like that. So I think where you're coming from, whether he is or whether he's not, that debate's almost secondary. But even if he were to play at the elite utmost level, this Pacers team still doesn't really thrive because of it. They thrive because he's a complementary piece and he's incredibly clutch. And I think we're seeing more about the foundation outside around him, outside of him in Indiana, and that's what was good enough to overcome the Knicks. I don't know, as we talked about last week, if it's good enough to overcome the depth and the sum of the parts that Oklahoma City has.
Well, I think he needs a couple of those guys to step up, put up 13, 15 points, be around him, and create some shots. Now, I do believe the game in Indy, this first game in Indy, will probably be a lot closer.
Yeah.
Because NBA Finals are always built off of adjustments, right? And you make your adjustments throughout the series. So for all of the defensive pressure that Oklahoma City put on Halliburton, now they're going to look at it and say, okay, what can we do to create spacing for him? You'll see that a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if you see their big men actually coming out more. Go into a bit more pick and roll, which is probably what they should be running.
What they need to be doing, yeah.
Right? And the reason being is because with that Oklahoma City team, the one problem that you have is length. There's a ton of length on that floor. And what do people, a casual basketball fan may not pay attention to this or know this, but the difference with teams that have length are turnovers. And that's what you look for. You look for teams with length that create turnovers, and if they do, they generally are formidable on defense.
And it's like that in multiple levels of basketball. The story of the NCAA tournament this year was very much like that. Auburn had a lot of length. Duke had a ton of length, and that's why we were curious how Florida and Houston would be able to capitalize off of that, and they did with three-point shooting, which kind of is a testament and a reflection of what Indiana has to do, because when they get going, we talked about it with Toppin, right, and with Nesmith, when they land their threes, then Pascal, all he has to do is kind of just steer the ship. Then Halliburton can be a complimentary clutch performer who, even if he doesn't have the best stat line, you're talking about him like the hero of the game because all he has to do is shine in those big moments. Again, it works for a team like New York who has some defensive deficiencies, not so much like Oklahoma City. You mentioned the length, the size. We saw that in the playoffs, in the Western Conference Finals specifically against Minnesota. They brutalized Minnesota, a team who likes to play one-on-one isolation style. It didn't work. Now you have a team with Indiana. Ball movement, passing, team basketball, and it's still not working because you see them having a bob and weave and navigate their way through essentially what's a forest. And that's why Chet Holmgren, you're really seeing the impact he makes, not just because of his athletic ability, his ability to produce, but just for him being out there, how difficult he makes it. The surrounding pieces is no different. And we mentioned the depth. Alex Caruso has been an absolute force for them. He's in many ways an X factor. We saw him against the Lakers. We saw him against the Timberwolves. And now it's just kind of same song, different verse. So even though Indiana, we were lively in the group chat texting about it. You were even thinking maybe I should, for the hell of it, for a fun little fade, or even to try to middle the things out, throw a C-no on Indiana for a series prize because it was a hell of a value there attached to that series prize. But even so, sitting here, us, collectively last week, we had trouble envisioning this series going further than 6 games. Jimmy only had it going 5. And even though it's 1-1 right now, since we saw OKC do that last night, there's almost a sense of recalibration. Not to say they're going to close the door and it's going to be a gentleman's sweep. They win at 4-1. But at this point, it just kind of seems like the Pacer or the Thunder team we were expecting, and the Thunder team that had such a big, gap in the odds on paper, that is what we saw. So now you have to wonder in the third installment, going back to Indiana, the Pat McAfee factor. There's a lot to unpack there, and there is, what you said, it kind of sounded funny last week, but the more I thought about it, it has a lot to do with it. Indiana's not a huge market. It's a basketball town. They treat the sport like religion, and they have a major figure in sports media there kind of helming it all. They're going to be lively, and Indy's going to be popping tonight. And if they go up 2-1, regardless of how this series pans out and what we're talking about next week, I think that'll be just a huge statement to how scrappy this team is. Because we saw when everything's clicking, Steve, for the Thunder, Game 2 is what happens. But when you give Indiana a little room, a little life, a little breathing room to make things difficult for you, they will because of the clutch factor. And we have to wonder, Oklahoma City, we haven't seen much in that department other than Game 1 in these playoffs, and they folded. But when they take care of business, put their foot on the gas. That's not the case. It's almost a matter of what this game is going to look like the rest of the way, at least to me, what it will look like heading into the fourth quarter.
Well, and I'm glad you say that because Halliburton was 2 of 7 through the first 3. And then scored 12 points in the fourth.
Bingo. It's that late clutch gene.
That he's got that. That's great. That killer mentality, that type thing he can do. But if Oklahoma City keeps him to 2 for 7 and he only gets 7 shots put up in 3 quarters, I would only bet that this series continues to look like it did
last night.
I'm
with you. And even Michael Lugo says in the comments, and if you're watching us, listening on any of our platforms, following along, like, subscribe, you can jump in the comments as well. We'll keep phone lines open. We want to hear from you. But Michael Lugo even says he's too much of a true point guard, which is actually very true. I think we are so accustomed to seeing the modern-day version of a point guard. When we see a bit of a throwback like Tyrese Halliburton, we don't really know what to do with it. And Lugo also says in the comments, it seems he has to see his teammates' shots go in to get rhythm instead of his own shots. And, I don't like to handicap body language or emotion, but when you see how things work in sequence, sometimes you have to wonder, and that's a good observation too. It's so much of a team-driven sport in terms of what team-driven game in terms of what Indiana does well offensively. And I get it. You dance with who brought you there. Or what is it, Steve? The what we got to put on T-shirts? You don't. What is it? You don't ask someone out or you don't dance for the prom. You dance for the graduation. Yeah. We'll get back to it. Maybe Brennan Allen, if he's following along, he can remember it. It was a hell of a quote. I know I just butchered it. But either way, you stick with what has worked for you. The problem is with Indiana, the way they function, if he doesn't get going, they kind of have to rely on the people around him. And against a team like Oklahoma City, who's an offensive juggernaut, as much as I like the story of Toppin and some of these other guys and the Neesmiths and McConnell and all these guys, it's also kind of reflective of the fact they don't have the firepower to do that.
Well, and when you have a team like that that's not built in that capacity to be able to by the way, real quick, Aaron, the producer, is
candid shot.
He's got another camera that we're working with.
Yep.
As you can see, why the comments are making their way up.
Yep,
purely based on the fact that it's okay, Aaron. We took care of it. Okay,
yep.
we picked you up, and when I say we, I mean Brett.
Yes.
We did. But
it's all good. Steve, nice complimentary
the
piece.
thing, and Michael Lugo just mentioned one team truly battle tested, one walked through their conference, the hard time winning closed games,
and that's in a nutshell.
And it's true, but the thing is that I believe that Indianapolis, and this is why I said that I thought that this matchup was not good for them, was because they were going to have to play perfect basketball every night.
Yeah. And good luck doing that.
Oklahoma City can stumble, and they took you to the wire, and you had to have a big shot land to win that game.
When we were preparing the show last night in the group chat, just these little notes I have in front of me, I was thinking that same thing. It doesn't necessarily feel labored in the fact, because we talked about, the Knights-Edmonton series, right? That felt labored. It felt like no matter what the Knights did, Edmonton was 2 steps ahead. Even the Knicks, they managed to make it close late in that series in the Eastern Conference Finals, but it felt labored because you knew they were just a little outmatched.
Right.
I don't necessarily think it feels labored for Indiana in the sense that they're so outmatched to where it feels desperate, but you can tell they have to have everything going right for them, like game 1, and they have to have a little luck down the stretch to where they can close the gap, and Oklahoma City allows them to fight back into it. When all things work out for both teams, Oklahoma City every time, I believe, is going to be the better team, even if Indiana plays brilliantly. And it's like you said, they have to play perfect, and Oklahoma City, kind of like what we just saw in the comments from Lugo, has to kind of let them in the fight. If you are playing into the discretion of what the other team is allowing you to do, hats off to you if it could work out for you. I'll give you credit. I just don't know if in a full series that's going to wind up being a successful formula.
Well, look, and you could take Shai and Halliburton, right? Put them side by side. And if I told you had to pick one of those two to go out and score 30 points, you're taking Shai all day.
Always.
Right?
All day. Yep.
The second thing is,
and I love Howard,
is that if you take either of them away from their team, now what does the team look like? And I'll tell you right now, and as crazy as this is, dude's MVP, right? If you took Shai away from Oklahoma City, I believe they still have the same scoring possibilities. They still create the same type of shots. They still have the same type of support. And it doesn't change the rotation much because Williams just moves over to him. So from that standpoint, they just have so many more moving pieces that make sense.
Good way to put it.
Whereas I can't look at this Pacers team and tell you, look, Siakam's nice. We talked about Siakam. I like the fact that he's doing this again, and he's got some veteran presence, and that might help a little bit in this series. But he's not – I'm not taking Siakam. Right now, in the starting five on Oklahoma City, I don't know that I would replace any of them.
Yeah.
With Siakam,
and
if I did, is it Naismith?
And mainly because you don't really need to, right? Like even if you think Siakam would be a contributing piece, which he probably would, you could put Siakam on any of the ball clubs in the NBA, and he will help because he's that good of a player and he has the veteran leadership and the championship experience. But with what Oklahoma City already does and the way they stir the drink, he really wouldn't make that much of a difference because of the way they're structured. And a team like Indiana, he obviously is going to make that much more of a difference. And that's why, it's kind of like I don't want to make it seem like they're two different tiers or Indiana doesn't belong in the same conversation. But when you look at how Indiana kind of got here compared to how Oklahoma City got here, that's reflective. Now, sometimes that can be smoke and mirrors when the matchup's not there because as we always talk about, styles make fights. The problem is you have one team with a dominant resume who that reflects exactly that they kick ass. The other team has a resume that reflects that that they won't go away. You can't put them away. They're going to fight to the very end, and they're going to be a problem.
Exactly.
But when you have that former team who decides to show up, then what that latter team does, it becomes much more null and void. So listen, I hope it continues to be an interesting series. I'd love to see the Pacers bounce back tonight just to make it interesting heading into Game 3. Again, going down in Indy tonight, it should be lively. It should be hype. Pacers on the at home dogs getting 5 points, total of 228.5. That's also interesting. When it's all said and done, it's going to be very interesting to see how these totals play out. Lower scoring the game naturally is going to favor Oklahoma City with that defense and with that style. Higher scoring game that goes late, game of runs, it's going to favor Halliburton and company with Indiana. So very much what we're going to see in the first three quarters. I know that's kind of the case with every sport out there, period. That kind of operates in increments. Team sports that operates in increments at times. But with the way these teams are both structured, the style, the coaching, the offense, you need Indiana to be right there every step of the way because what we saw yesterday, Steve, Oklahoma City just sat on that lead and it got worse and worse and worse. Some teams get better as they hold that lead and as their defense kind of imposes their will, and that was the case. So we'll see if it plays that differently tonight on Wednesday for Indiana. Again, they're the 5-point dog, getting 5 points at home. That's a tight spread, but either way, anytime you get a home team, first home game of the series, getting points, that's always interesting. Before we go to break, though, because obviously we'll have plenty more to recap next time we're on the show. As we talked about last week, I mean, look at how much we just talked about there off of 2 games, and we haven't even gotten the Stanley Cup Finals. We've had 2 games through that so far with a third game tonight, and it feels like we played damn near a full series. But ultimately, Steve, I want to ask before we go to break, the card markets, and you and Jimmy did a great job of really tapping into what you guys are looking for with each passing round of the playoffs, how it differs through the semis, through the conference finals, and of course with the finals themselves. And you have the big name players like the ones we just mentioned, including the MVP. But is there anybody whose card market, I won't say regardless of outcome, but dependent of the outcome, regardless of the side, I should say, is there anybody's card market who you think come July, August, and going into the fall when we start the 2025 campaign, that will be a completely different story than what it is right now? Or is it kind of just going to be par for the course? The big names will sell, especially if it's an MVP with a championship like we expect SGA to get.
Shiloh's going to see a little bit of a bump from it, but I don't think it'll be enough to really move the needle too much. He has had jumps, over this year already and even last year when he was running at the MVP conversation. I think the guy, Halliburton obviously showed you he can close, and you saw an immediate tick of sales online as soon as Halliburton hit that shot. Right?
Okay.
So that right there told you that there's a market out there of people that have not bought Halliburton yet that are starting to believe, and that's what you need.
And an element of recency bias, because so many people probably haven't even seen, even in the Eastern Conference Finals, the Reggie Miller, the choke in Game 1. There are people who are watching this series who didn't even watch that, so they're kind of exposed in many ways to both SGA and Halliburton for the first time.
Exactly, and so I think Halliburton will have a little bit more bump, especially like if they go and win a game again tonight, and now the discussion becomes about him. And because look, we're all about what have you done for me lately? we would be talking heavily if we came off of game 1 and we're doing this today.
Yeah.
We would be talking about Halliburton and how great he was and all this stuff.
Yep.
And instead, we're talking about how he went 2 for 7 in the first 3 quarters and whatever. What you're going to see, though, in the card market, and this is where I think is interesting, is not necessarily in this series, but where you're going to see some of the guys in the playoffs kind of moving the needle over the next year or two.
Okay, that's
right.
So long-term
and
aspect.
I think that that's going to be the play. And like, look, Anthony Edwards, his prices are elevated, but I think we all know that team's coming back. That team will be in the mix.
It'll be
team will
assembled.
be there.
Yep.
So you'll start to see that. Are the Lakers going to do enough to bring something else in around, Luka and LeBron? Because if they do, that helps Luka's market. Like, those are things that matter, right? So when you start looking at it, you've also got some young players in basketball right now that I think you should be on the lookout for. There are some guys, because as far as product went this year, the product was not very good because the guys that were drafted high did not play well.
Yeah, it was a up and down rookie, hot and cold rookie class.
So really you kind of look, there's a kid in Chicago, in Bazelis, right? He's probably one of the ones that you can sneak in and grab some stuff on. He's a player like that. You've got a couple other kids out there that you've got opportunities in. Houston has a handful of players that haven't had their market realized. And keep in mind that this team was a playoff team.
Yeah.
So they're going to be back. They're all young. You can look at situations like that. I think the bigger problem that you have is that there are players in this series that could be affected if things don't go well. Like if Halliburton goes out and has another pedestrian night, you will see that freeze happen. And unless they go on some crazy run, he scores 43 nights in a row or something like that, you won't necessarily see that happen.
And then Lugo says in the comments, any of the role players that could possibly be leaving one of their finals team that could go somewhere else to look out for, which is kind of what you're alluding to right now.
Yeah, well, the big one obviously is Giannis, right?
Yeah.
So when we start talking about Giannis and where he's going to end up being and what he could end up doing, you have a couple of players that are going to force their hands out of situations that they're in. This is going to be an interesting offseason for the NBA for sure.
And you have Durant, too. You got to wonder what the future is with
Durant,
that.
which is the other situation there. You also need to talk about what is going to happen in Golden State because now they're freeing up more available monies.
Yep.
So what they end up doing in Steph's final hurrahs, right? You start looking at that stuff. I think those things are really going to be relevant to the offseason. I think you've kind of got the spikes on the current market, the players that are playing currently. And unless, look, you could buy Shai today, and if Shai goes out and scores 40 points over the next 2 or 3 games, each game, then you might see a bump on him just because he went and flexed,
and
right?
then someone like an Alex Caruso, who Lugo just also asked about, because he's someone who has people in basketball circles, people who follow this stuff closely, we're going to know about. We're going to know about what he did with LeBron in the bubble and the Lakers, and we obviously know what he's done so far with Oklahoma City and what he looks to continue to do, but the casual basketball fan, the casual card collector may not know as much about him. Is there any, based off of what history has told you, based on what this series is telling you, is there any time where you see a really sound role player shine, but doesn't really tell a difference?
He's got to be young.
There you go.
Right?
So the story doesn't change if he's already established.
Obi Toppin goes off and makes a run because he's a 2020 guy, right?
Makes sense.
He's within that window,
so
right?
You can't.
They can have some time to get there.
The ship can't sail.
But like Caruso has sailed.
Okay.
Right? He doesn't have a market like that.
Yes.
There's not collectors coming up saying, I collect Alex Caruso. And if you do, you're a handful of
You're a diehard.
Very few people that do. He's just not that guy. And so you have to have that to be able to get these type of things to really make a difference in, so let's say, this series, right? Before the playoffs, there were players that you could buy that would, get you to a spot. We were telling you then, Shai was still a pretty good buy at that point. He started to tick up. Once they ran through the Timberwolves, you knew exactly where he was at and what he's doing, and you don't have a lot more of that. So you don't have to worry about that so much. Before we go to break, though, I did want to mention the fact that, since you alluded to it, on the Gameday Mavericks, the Southwest location opening, First off, everybody who came out, that was incredible. What a great environment. They were busy all day, but they were steady busy heavily till 2 o'clock. The game day team came down. Jimmy brought the whole group over to help support them, which was awesome. Luis was even there helping out, which was great because she's always one that keeps everybody in check, doing what they're supposed to, which was awesome. But no, we had a great time. Maverick, Mia, and Cristobal over there, the owners of that location, they're going to do really, really well. It's a cool shop. It's a fun vibe, good people. And we even saw Las Vegas Card Show's Dakota get a trim while he was there. Because you can also become a client of Cristobal's, and he does have a chair to cut hair there as well. So, which was really fun.
Two birds, one stone.
So Dakota was chilling in the seat. We also had Game Day Colton got a trim while he was there as well too. So the guys took a total opportunity on that.
Apparently, had coupons for tacos, right?
We had tacos going on. We had a lot of cool stuff. But then also, this weekend is the Las Vegas Card Show. It is at the Ahern, and so that'll be on Saturday and Sunday. Make plans to come out. I think both game day locations this week will probably have a way for you to be able to get some sort of ticket to the show. You may have an opportunity to do that, so make sure you go by and see them. And since we know Jimmy's in store today, you can just go bug him and tell him, hey, I heard that you might have, but you can go talk to those guys.
Hop in the car, get YouTube, get your social media app up. Plug in the aux cord, get the Game Day Huddle up on the speakers, and roll on into the store. Go see Jimmy.
I love that you used aux cord.
Oh, absolutely.
That's great.
Yeah, so, the funny thing is, aux cord is one of those things that you don't even use compared to Bluetooth, yet even if you're on Bluetooth, you want to say aux cord. Yeah. It's like one of those things where it's like, I'm not ready to depart. It's like there's the culture surrounding aux cord and road trips and passing it along that Bluetooth will just never be able to tap into. But Michael Lugo asked, did they do the raffle yet?
I will check in on that because that was Game Day Mavericks. That was their social media they were doing it on. So if you're not following them, you should, which is just Game Day Mavericks _22. So make sure you follow them on Instagram. That's where they were going to be making that announcement. Cool giveaways. Also had a realtor that came in. She was giving away a pair of Raiders tickets to somebody as well too. So a lot of fun. I had a good time. It was really fun to see the group of people that came out. Everybody that supported it and had things going on. That was all incredible and very fun. So, but we'll obviously keep checking in with what's going on over there. And in fact, I think we'll probably have Cristobal on here soon.
Oh, cool.
In studio to come in on a Game Day Huddle and join us and kind of talk about. But we want to let them get their feet underneath them and, and do that over there.
Get the ball rolling. But obviously, we love those type of insights. Anytime we could get a guest in, we love it because that card community, right? That card collective. Every time even I walk in the studio, I learn a little bit more myself, so it's cool to hear as many insights as you possibly can. And again, you get these insights week in and week out on the Game Day Huddle. And again, be sure to go check out the new Game Day Sports Front in their Southwest location and any of their locations, whatever's most convenient for you, wherever you are in town, including One of Us Comics. So, there's so much in the card market to learn, so much to unpack, and that's what we do on this very show. And if you continue to jump in the comments with your own questions, with your own opinions, we appreciate it, just like Michael Lugo's doing. You can do the same, so like, subscribe, follow us on all of our digital platforms to stay in the loop as the conversation continues. And speaking of the continuing conversation, we're going to, again, go to a break, but on the other side, we got some hockey to talk about. Look, we could talk about the NBA Finals. Is it flashy? Is it sexy? Is it substance? Whatever. Either way, the games on the court are going to be interesting, regardless of what you think about the markets of Oklahoma City and Indianapolis. But with Edmonton and Florida, a rematch, a true clash of the Titans feel, and two teams that are absolutely going at it, something's got to give as they go back tonight, or they go to Miami for the first time in the series tonight. Puck will drop. It's a 1-1 series, but again, it feels like we've already played damn near a full series as it is. So Steve and I will break that down next, so don't go anywhere. On a Monday from the Go Live Vegas studio, it is the Game Day Huddle.
Comic-Con.com, your daily comic rotation online. Insightful reviews of the comics, toys, and games you need to know. The live chats, videos, around spectrum, in print, on video, and everywhere in between. The show never stops on Comic-Con.com.
Come on down to the film bar, right here and never do more. Let's do tonight, what do and get it right. Lanes you have, the friends of me. Around, let them play. Voodoo Ball's a place to stay.
Vegas studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
All right, fun stuff on a Monday from the Go Live Vegas studio. It is the Game Day Huddle. Brett Lawson, Steve Johnson, Jimmy Garino in the trenches for the new location for Game Day Sports Card. So again, be sure to check it out. As you just mentioned, as Steve just mentioned before the break, it was obviously a great opening weekend. They're back in action already as it is here on a Monday morning. So go find Jimmy and check out the store for yourself. And of course tonight, be sure to check out Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals, because if you've missed it as it is already, you are definitely missing out. But don't worry, because with all, Steve, that we have seen in the first two games, if the recent history has told us anything, this will continue to be an absolute thriller. And if you have caught the first two games, you almost have to be just as exhausted, just as physically and emotionally spent as the players on the ice. I don't even have a dog in this fight. I don't even have a lot of betting investment in this series. I sat here last week in between you and Jimmy wondering, what should I get excited about? Because normally I'm so excited about a championship rematch. I'm excited when you see truly the two best teams go at it, and when you have a stylistic matchup with teams who play the way Edmonton plays and the way Florida plays respectively. Usually it's always going to make for a great series, yet something seemed to be missing, and I don't know what it was. Steve, I'll tell you right now, opinions can change, and mine has. I am all in on this series. We have even texted in our group chat after game one, let alone through the first two games, how awesome this is. And you made a very interesting comment about 1-1, tied series, thrillers in both, heading back to Sunrise, Florida tonight for game 3. This is exactly what the National Hockey League wants and in many ways needs.
Well, and they needed it because this didn't necessarily look, this has the superstar flash, but it doesn't necessarily have those franchises that everybody that isn't in their market rocking jerseys.
Yeah.
Right? It just doesn't happen.
Yep.
You used to have the Oilers jerseys rocked way back in the day, but not
Gretzky
anymore,
day, yep.
right?
Gretzky
You
years.
still talk about teams that when you're out of market that you see people wear. Boston, right?
New York,
the Kings,
Chicago.
the Rangers,
yes,
the Blackhawks. Those are teams that the jerseys get worn out of market. I would argue that now the Golden Knights are a team that the jerseys get wore out of market.
No doubt.
But not necessarily these teams. So these teams really had to put on a product and a show that was going to keep people interested. Because if these first two games were 3-1 wins, one-sided by one team, then the NHL would probably not be doing very well with it. So I think that, in my opinion, that this series needed superstar flash. You needed the show off. Look, the cross between the legs by McDavid.
Saucy.
And then the shot, like, those are things that you need in a series like this that really are going to bring it to people's minds, right? Two, as weird as it is, you would think that the NBA playoffs wasn't as watchable for a majority of people, but I actually think the argument is there that they actually are watching more because Oklahoma City is in this.
Right.
Because that team just showcased so many good players that most people didn't watch basketball steady for the whole season, are like, hey, I gotta look and see why this team is so good.
Great point.
Right? So you have that going up against you. They need to continue to do this. The best thing that could ever happen for the NHL, though, is for the Oilers to pull this off.
Right.
And the only way they're going to do it is they have to take one of these two games tonight.
No doubt.
And then they have to go home and handle business. They can't. And they're built as a team that can do it. They are built as a team that can score in bunches, they can score quick, and they can actually force you into penalty situations.
And that's what we're seeing. We're seeing the shots on goal, the power play for both teams coming into full effect, because Edmonton has an element of physicality this year. They punched the Golden Knights right in the mouth. We saw it. They already have the team speed, the skating ability, the scoring ability, and now you counter that with Florida's physicality. We've seen instances where it looks like Florida ready to go for the throat, slam the door. Edmonton has battled back into it in both games. It's gone to overtime. You have the star players shining. everything that you could possibly ask for, let alone some bad blood as well between two teams who don't like each other. You have the Canada versus USA element going back to the Four Nations tournament, and now you have this culminating in a rematch. It's the best storybook you could possibly concoct. And again, you're pairing with the NBA Finals that is interesting, but maybe not the most not the flashiest. And at the same time, it's an NHL. It's a period in the NHL, right, where you have a lot of new players that are kind of entering in the fold in the conversation of the elite, of that crop. And a lot of them are in the playoffs, but everyone in this particular series, Steve, is established, right? They may be young, but they're established. They've made their bones. You know who they are. Hockey is a niche sport anyway as it is, so people who follow this sport are going to know all about these star players. And that's what, kind of makes this all interesting. It's really the best of the bunch thrown out there. And again, the offense, the shots on goal. Hockey, playoff hockey is one of those things where if you look away, you could be kicking yourself because you can miss something drastic, or if you leave the room. This is an instance if you check your phone for 5 seconds, or if you turn your back to go in the kitchen to get a beverage or to get a snack, and then you turn back around and a team has scored. I have missed multiple goals of this series in real time simply because my head is turned. That is how relentless the attack on the Nets have been. That is how much the goaltenders have had to work, and that is why we have seen these games go into overtime, even at a certain period or a certain point in the second period, in the third period, where it seems like it is all but set or all but wrapped up. That continues to not be the case. And like you said, now you have two diehard fan bases. Rogers Place showed out. I'm curious to see how they do so down in Sunrise tonight and for the next couple. And like you said, they're the defending champs. At this point, this may be considered a championship rivalry. Those Florida fans are going to be rabid, and they're going to be ready to go. So it just goes to show if Edmonton is able to get one on the road in big fashion, even if it's, another one of these squeak it out clutch wins, or even if they just play their asses off and outright beat Florida on the road, that will be huge for Edmonton when it's all said and done. And just like you said, I think Edmonton winning will be huge for the NHL. Listen, every time you can get a dynasty, it helps. Tampa Bay, Pittsburgh, Chicago, when you can win back-to-back or multiple in a short span of years, that's good for any sport. But a team like Edmonton, who, like you said, hasn't won it since the great one himself, you have Gretzky up on the set, right, for the pregame or the intermission report, the postgame show, all that. He's on the broadcast. Everyone's been wondering, will McDavid finally get his championship? He's been in the league now for, 9, 10, maybe even 11 years as an elite player. Draisaitl's there with them. It just, all the pieces are kind of moving to where it's either you're going to have a repeat champion, which is good, or Edmonton, a major brand, not an original 16, but a major brand. I mean, Aaron and Raquel. Aaron, you're a Calgary fan, right? You're not who are you a fan of? It used to be the Flames. Okay, it used to be the Flames, and now he likes the Knights. And even Aaron texted me during the game that he would like to see Edmonton win. Simply put, it's a good story. It is, and we're always looking for the good story. Not to say if Florida gets it done, we won't find a story in that. But there you go. And as Aaron just says, Canada, the nation of Canada hasn't won since the Canadians. Well, plus, the Canadians were in the mix a few years ago, came up short. They're waiting.
For Vegas, it's a very important thing because there's bonuses. Look, when these teams win championships, players get bonuses for this stuff. And the city of Las Vegas could absolutely use this bonus to get paid because Evander Kane's got a pretty big ticket out here that he needs to pay. Yeah. And, the city of Las Vegas, these casinos would like to collect on it.
Absolutely.
So there's another benefit. Now,
Amen to that.
That's me taking shots at Evander Kane.
Oh, well, if you're a Golden Knight fan, you have to be. If you're a Las Vegas resident,
I get a chance.
You have to be. But again, he's another one in the mix. We look for narrative all the time in sports, and sometimes we force it, sometimes it's contrived, sometimes it isn't. I like that on both the NBA and Stanley Cup front, Steve, we have a narrative. We have a narrative in the card market. We have the narrative in the grand scheme of things as far as the championship conversation, and really just the individual portfolios of all these players. But let me ask you something. Someone like McDavid, who's been the cream of the crop now for about 10 years, who's considered maybe the most naturally gifted and talented hockey player to ever step foot on the ice. How big is a talent like him getting his first win, getting Edmonton's first win in God knows how long, and the first win for Canada in decades, all those things for such a monumental, iconic player? What does that do for his card market? Because we always talk about the rub, the push, but even outside of cards, if McDavid were to get this done, it would be a huge part of the conversation surrounding his legacy. I expect the card market, even if it's not a massive surge, I expect the card market to kind of run parallel with that, right?
When you're not the NFL or Major League Baseball, then, and it's crazy because basketball has so much revenue in it.
Yeah.
Right? So much revenue. But
Yep.
when you're not baseball and you're not football, if your news doesn't become sports news and just is in your sport.
Yes.
Right? So if it's just NHL news.
If it doesn't transcend the beat, I get what you're saying.
Then
yes.
it doesn't affect the market enough to move it because there's not enough in there.
Mm-hmm.
When it does, though, that's when things really change.
And
because,
McDavid winning, is that one of those scenarios? Would you
because
say?
if McDavid wins,
Mm-hmm.
he will be talked about on, you'll start having is there a Rushmore spot for him?
Right.
Is there this? Is there
Right.
that? And then what happens is the guys, especially when you think of the dealer side, that are, real heavy in football, maybe a little lighter in baseball, do some basketball. They might pivot out a little of their some basketball and start moving in McDavid product because people are asking for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens is when people start to ask for it, and that's what occurs is people go, oh, you know what? That McDavid guy, it's cool. Oh, he's winning his first title. You know what? Let's go get a rookie card. Let's go get an autograph. Let's go get and as soon as you do that, you start to see that market, jump a little bit. That's where I think you would see it affect it. But even at
Gotcha.
that, I don't know if it's enough of a needle mover to say it's going to be moved so much that you're going to feel like it, 1.5x is it.
Great clarification.
Not going to happen.
And that's what I love because you look at something like I was so not taken aback, but surprised when I found out the market for Jokic, who I believe is the best player in the National Basketball Association. Many do. It's not like I'm the only one with that opinion. But I was surprised when the card market wasn't soaring with him, nor was it even soaring necessarily in the aftermath of 2 years ago, the Denver Nuggets winning the NBA, winning the Larry O'Brien Trophy, right? Winning the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's just because it wasn't really a transcendent story. The year before, Golden State, Steph Curry coming back to win a fourth one when we thought that dynasty was dead and gone, over with. They come back and beat a great team like Boston. I could see where that gets a lot more of a rub because it's more mainstream. So I like that you bring that up. Look at what the talk shows are telling you. What are the columns telling you? What is social media telling you? If it is in the national conversation, if it is being consumed by sports media, then it's a bigger story than just the sport. If just the articles and the podcasts about that specific sport are covering it, like they're always going to, no matter how big the sport is, it may not have the same type of effect.
And I'll give a little credit. Someone that gave me this phrase, Hoodie, gave us this phrase, and the phrase that he gave me was, "I don't sell speculation, I sell the news."
Another T-shirt, baby.
Right? And he takes and I agree with him, and I've used that since then of talking about this stuff because when you sell the news, it's relevant to most people.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
When I'm speculating, it's within the hobby set, it's within the space, it's within those people. So it's completely different, right?
100%.
Whereas we can look right now, and I know that we got to touch on this here in a minute anyways, right? That news of Aaron Rodgers now signing with the Steelers that we got, what does that do? Well, first off, outside of game one, because ironically, they go to New York to play the Jets in game one of the season.
Well calculated by the Shield.
Right?
Yep.
With that whole set right there, you're going to forget Aaron Rodgers was a Jet. And in fact, 2 years from now, most people, you'll ask them, what teams did he play for? And they're going to say the Green Bay Packers and the Steelers.
Yeah.
And the reason that this happens is because, like, for example, Brett Favre was a Jet.
We forget about it.
But
All the
you
time.
think of him as a Viking?
Packer and Viking.
And Viking.
And there's that 1 year with New York that no one remembers.
Right.
Yeah.
So when you have these situations like this, Drew Brees was a Dolphin, right? Like, these players don't get remembered. Phillip Rivers was a Colt, right? Like, it doesn't happen in these
That's
situations,
so
right?
It's so true. Even I forgot about that. I'm like, wait, was he? He was. That's right. In his last year. Yep.
You think about where Joe Montana played too.
Yeah, Kansas
right?
City. Yeah, Kansas
so
City.
You go and you think about these things, and they don't get as considered because the clip, it's what have you done for me lately, and where did you make the biggest
impact? Do you remember Carson Palmer being a Raider? I sometimes struggle to remember that he was a Raider. No, I'm with you.
So when you go through these lists of like what guys have done, where they've been, what's happened, whatever it is, in the situation to McDavid is in that spot where he has elevation possibilities because of the fact that in his sport, it's truly not expected that you've gotten there until you've won one. And on top of that, because of the type player he is, he would become the national news story. Whereas on the other side, Florida wins. I hate to say it, and even Brad Marchand is not getting a bump in his market because, one, he's been there. He has trophies. He's done things. And on top of it, the guy is absolutely one of those players that he just doesn't do enough off the ice to keep you interested.
Right, and exactly, because
right?
he's not a mainstream name. He may be an elite player, and Marchand's been incredible. And the Florida Panthers have a lot of great players. The Edmonton Oilers have a lot of great players, but there's certain players that we say move the needle. I know it's an adage, it's cliche, but it's true. And it's like what you said. Is it a mainstream aspect of coverage, or is it a niche aspect of coverage? If Marchand wins a cup, right, every hockey podcast, every hockey website, every hockey social media account, and every just casual fan in any bar and wherever it may be where you have a hockey presence, that's going to be relevant. In the national sense, in the national conversation, not so much, because there is that fine line. And sometimes it's a really fine line. Sometimes it's a huge gap.
Yeah.
It just depends on the circumstances. So I think that's a great point. And speaking of the NFL, we'll get that on the other side. Lugo makes a great comment in the chat. I'm sure one person remembers Aaron Rodgers on the Jets. Yeah, it was Fireman Ed. So there you go. But really quick, Steve, again, series tied 1-1. You have the Stars showing out. You have a thriller. You have two thrillers in Edmonton. We hope that continues here in Miami on that front as well. But heading into Game 3 tonight, Panthers as the minus 148 chalk. The Oilers coming back as the plus 124 favorites. I agree with you. Edmonton has to get one on the road front. I don't think it's this one, though. I think Florida gets it done. I don't necessarily know if we have another overtime type of classic, but I do think, again, we're going to see a very interesting game where you could see a goal here in the opening seconds, because these teams are just absolutely relentless when attacking the pipes.
I think that the way that you should look at this is watch the pregame entries. And if you see McDavid walking into this like he's a pissed off kid and someone took something from him, then you might want to think twice about what tonight will be. And if he can rebound like that, and the one thing in his career is I don't think he is being satisfied with mediocrity, right?
Yep.
And I think he feels like they played a very mediocre game from all of the comments that I've heard from him, that they just didn't get it done. We didn't get in the right spots. He's saying all of the coach speak, in which to say, we did not do our job to do what we need to do.
And then I don't... What is it? Is that a laughing emoji?
It is.
Oh, well,
it's the crying, laughing
Yeah,
emoji.
when I'm here, apparently Raquel Ellikis does not like the Edmonton Oilers, but when I'm at home watching the series, I'm getting texts from Aaron and Raquel. Apparently, all of a sudden, they do like the Edmonton Oilers. And I misspoke there mentioning the Jets. I meant to say Brett Favre rather than Aaron Rodgers, but what's the one common theme they have? They were Packer quarterbacks who became irrelevant in New York, so there you go. And that's exactly what we're going to hit on next. Again, we'll have plenty to unpack next week on both the NBA and the NHL front. It's championship season. It's a fun time. June is an absolute blast in the sports calendar. I mean, we had this jam-packed weekend. You had the classic at Roland Garros in the French Open. Alcaraz staying in the fight and getting it done over Jannik Sinner in a 5.5-hour classic. Coco Gauff beats Sabalenka in a huge upset. You have UFC 316. Merab Dvalishvili dominant in a rematch against Sean O'Malley to stake his claim as maybe the best ever fight at 135. And on the 135 women's realm, Kayla Harrison is now a champion. She's dominant, and now you have Amanda Nunes coming back to face her. We have the U.S. Open going down this week. We had the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga, right? You had a Sovereignty winning, the winner of the Derby, right? I mean, and you have to wonder, because he didn't run in the Preakness, he could have been another Triple Crown winner had they actually decided to pursue
and
that. So yeah, go ahead.
The biggest news,
yes.
WrestleMania coming back to Las Vegas.
Thank you. I was actually going to save that for the end, but I love it. That's a great. As we go out to break, that's a great way to plug it. We don't like to overly localize things, but hey, Vegas is in the name of the network. We're Las Vegas locals.
It was the best thing for WWE.
Absolutely. To
bring it back and to be able to service the fan the way they did here.
No doubt. And we like to emphasize whenever something goes well for our city. WrestleMania 41, just about 5 or 6 weeks ago, was huge for our city. And even bigger, Steve, for the WWE. It is the most successful event in the history of that promotion, which is saying something. So successful that they come back. Had to get a little help from New Orleans. It was supposed to go there for like the third or fourth time.
Well, and I'll tell you why they did it.
Tell me.
If you go back and watch the replays of Money in the Bank,
right?
Because there are empty seats at Money in the Bank.
Yeah,
and they were the sponsor seats,
and
right, they're the ones that they were paid for. Those seats were bought.
And
it's not WWE's fault that people aren't there.
And it's a point where honestly, their product hasn't been. This is my opinion. Hasn't been necessarily great in particular since WrestleMania. So they realize that listen, WWE, like anything else, it's going to have its ebbs and flows. The key is reeling the people in around January, around February, Royal Rumble time when you start building up.
Let's hit this on the way back because I do want to talk about something they did that I thought was really smart.
I love it,
but it was too quick.
Okay.
But anyways, we'll talk about that.
That's what you call a tease. I'm glad to talk professional wrestling again. WrestleMania 42 a year later, we'll be back in Vegas. They've never done this before. They've been in the bubble in Florida and then in Tampa in Florida because of the COVID year. We've never had a year or 2 years in WrestleMania where they're at the same city consecutively. So that's huge. It's huge for Vegas. Anytime something big happens for our valley, we like to mention it on the show and on the airwaves. A Go Live Vegas. So again, we'll hit on that. And plus, we have news in the NFL, as Steve mentioned. Aaron Rodgers, we could finally put that to bed. He's a Pittsburgh Steeler. Will it mean anything? We'll hit on the other side, plus baseball and plenty more. It's a jam-packed time of year for sports, and we're here breaking down all of it on the Game Day Huddle on a Monday. And be sure to join in on that conversation. Like, follow us, and subscribe to all of our digital and social media platforms. We'll be back in just a few.
Peppermint Patty's the worst. Comic-Con.com, your daily comic convention online. Insightful reviews, previews of the comics, toys, and games you need to know. Delightful chats with luminaries from around the geek spectrum. In print, on video, and everywhere in between. The show never stops on Comic-Con.com.
Come on down to the good old bar. Craft beer's never too far. Like do every night. Do a crew and get it right. Raise the glass, raise the deal hat. The food, friends are near. Dance around, let them play. Voodoo Ball's a place to stay.
Vegas Studios, a unique multi-camera social media virtual content creators paradise. We offer high-end services using live streaming and film production for your personal or corporate, commercial or event and campaign needs. Pre-record or live stream to your audience on multiple social media platforms simultaneously. Fun and interactive with social media comments, phone lines, live remotes, audio Foley sounds, and Snapchat filters. Be creative, get recognized, and make money. We help you by providing an all in-house production team. Visit our website at golive.vegas.
All right, looking to wrap things up on the Game Day Huddle. Brent Lawson, Steve Johnson, Jimmy Garino here with us in spirit as he is down on the front for the new location, the Southwest location of Game Day Sports Cards.
But he's at Buffalo and Lake Mead today.
Okay, so no,
they are
yeah.
open though.
Okay,
so Southwest is open, which is 215 and Rainbow.
Yep.
Jimmy is at the Buffalo and Lake Mead, and that on Mondays is generally the day that you'll catch Jimmy and Mike there.
Yes.
On a full day, because they let most of the staff have Mondays off, so they run the shop on Mondays and individually to be able to help with.
And how even
scheduling.
you, because I saw you on the ground there for the opening. How is that for you, who's someone who has their own responsibilities, really kind of simultaneous because you have the game day operation and everything outside of that at One of Us Comics. How did that go for you on a Saturday?
Well, for me, it was I spent 4 hours at the register. Because what I did is I came in and helped them with some of their marketing stuff and with their POS integration and setup.
Awesome.
So I was walking their team through the full POS and running that full first day of it. And it's funny because I've done some of that because when we converted One of Us, a year or so ago to that POS system, I spent the whole day of the first day we did it, Free Comic Book Day, running through that and doing it as well. So it's pretty funny, but it's those type of events and seeing these things unfold is great because it's so neat to see the excitement in the community come out and and how that is.
And you just said it because, again, as I mentioned before the break when talking about WrestleMania, we're a national network with a national appeal, and our show does very much the same thing. And that's the beauty of being a digital show. But we still like to emphasize where we are, because where we are very much dictates into how we operate. It dictates how I operate in the sports media space, both locally, nationally, digitally, whatever it may be. And it very much affects what Steve and Jimmy do on the business front with their respective operations. And that's why, as Steve mentioned, WrestleMania coming back is such a big deal. We knew the Super Bowl would be a big deal, and it wound up being just that. It was one of the most successful weeks the city has ever had. It's one of the biggest broadcasts in the history. In fact, it's the biggest broadcast in the history of television. It beat the moon landing. Rest assured, the NFL is going to come back for another Super Bowl. It may be a while, but they'll be back. But for Mania to come back a year later, and again, I get it, New Orleans, whether they dropped the ball, whether something it was disjointed, a bump in the road, something happened, that's fine. And eventually it'll go back to New Orleans, because New Orleans, as we saw, they're a great Super Bowl town. They just had the Super Bowl in the aftermath of us having it. It was supposed to be the same way on the WWE side of things, but here we go, back in action a year later, as we just mentioned before the break, and for them to come back with like no gap in between is so monumental, because it shows that even if next year it isn't as successful, it'll probably be more successful, because as we know, anytime Vegas does something second time around, it is way better than the first time around. And the Super Bowl and WrestleMania, they did a pretty damn good job of on that first go around. But expect it to be an even smoother operation next year. And the fact, Steve, that they didn't even hesitate shows how much they know Vegas can profit, how much they can tap into the revenue in all aspects, and really come out on the other side, not just, on the up and up, but surging regardless of how good the product on television may or may not be. And what's so cool is that when you have the promotion, the entity, the face of professional wrestling, and it has been for quite some time, when you have them quickly, I won't say bending the knee, but quickly kind of yielding to the power of Vegas, it's awesome. But it also goes to show that the people in Vegas will yield to them because they realize how much it could help their business. In the break, you were even kind of tapping into that, and you even said now that it is officially new, set in stone, we don't have to wait into 2025 to find out where the date is. We know well in advance, almost a full year. Kind of go ahead, because you even mentioned to me off the air, fill in the audience about the process of how business owners and how people who have shops in different locations set up out here can tap into that, because they covered all different parts of town, just like the Super Bowl did.
Yeah.
Our valley, the proximity, the logistics allowed that to happen. How big is that just for an individual business
So many
owner?
business owners kept turning around, looking back in the past, and kept wanting to look at the NBA All-Star Game and saying, what kind of impact did it have on us here?
Absolutely.
And they kept knocking it, kept
get a
knocking
new
it down.
song, get a
Kept-
new joke.
right?
Yep.
Kept putting it down, putting it down, putting it down.
I couldn't agree
now,
more.
Once WWE came in, they're like, okay, let's see what to expect. I think that a majority of people, especially in the service-related businesses, were
Right.
like, yeah, we'll see an uptick. We don't know that we'll see too much.
Mm-hmm.
The fans that came out that didn't have tickets were unreal. The amount of people that came to town to be involved with the festivities, the events, and seeing all these smaller promotions and everything getting involved, coming in and planning things out.
Yeah.
There were people that were coming in and putting events together 10 days before the show.
Yeah.
Like to try to capture something because they had saw what the buzz had become,
Yeah.
what it was looking like, how it was going to be.
We had a guest on the show who was great with his card insights, breaking down the Super Bowl and everything else regarding NFL offseason and everything we're seeing on the basketball front. And Anthony Scott, he was in town, and it was great that he got to join us in the show. It all timed out well. He was in town for the event. He left literally later that Monday, and he even talked about, and he was an outsider coming in.
Yeah, and so if you're a business owner today and you get this news, you just added another thing to your day today, which is you're now planning on what you're going to do activated wise for that time period coming into next year.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts the weekend before. So you're doing whatever you can to come up with a game plan, focus, whatever it is, to come in that weekend before, and for you to be able to then write it out through that and what you're going to do. Because even though we're in the industry, we weren't even as dialed in on it as we probably could have been.
And that's what's cool, because now you get another chance, and now you realize whether we missed the boat, whether we kind of tapped into it but didn't fully invest, now we can recalibrate, go at it with another crack, and really profit and really just kind of gain a foothold, whether it be in our space or just the collective space. And I even mentioned to you as we were on break, the Super Bowl is a pop culture event. It's far more than a sporting event. WrestleMania is the same thing. And you, on your individual operation, you tap into the card side of things with Game Day Sports Cards. You tap into the pop culture, the fandom, the nerdy side of things, which pro wrestling is very much up their alley, right? That's in their wheelhouse. I mean, you guys have all kinds of people who directly kind of tap into your pool, into your waters and what you guys do, Jimmy as well, and that's what's so cool. So I love the fact you guys are going to get another shot at it. I love the fact the fans are going to get another shot at it. Allegiant's a smaller venue, but for an event like WrestleMania, that could work for the better. The Super Bowl sold out. It was like the lowest attended Super Bowl ever, but it was also one of the biggest Super Bowls ever, and that's what happens. We have a smaller venue, but because of that, we have a smaller valley around it. You don't have to drive 45 minutes to a random suburb like you do at Dallas, Fort Worth, or the Bay Area. You're right there.
What you're pointing out right there is exactly why it works so well for WWE. Because WWE is taking a piece of all those appearances of those wrestlers, right? Mm-hmm. So what happens is that wrestler comes in, and let's say it's, I don't know, just throw out the John Cena, right? John Cena comes in, and he's making some appearances. You're not driving him 3 hours or 2.5 hours in traffic across the city.
It's 15 minutes.
Right? You're 15, 20 minutes. They're center of the valley. Go wherever you need to be.
Amen.
And you literally in 45 minutes can be completely from one side of the valley to the other.
And it's like what you talked about. Pat McAfee, everywhere he goes, there's a rub. His show, all the ESPN and FS1 talk shows, all Radio Row for the Super Bowl.
His show, I will tell you right now, Pat, I'm calling this now. Pat McAfee's show next year will probably be held in some type of showroom environment here in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
So wherever they decide to hold that at, I guarantee you part of the discussions is getting his show a spot in a showroom, whether it's the Pearl at the Palms or something like that.
Some type of space where it could be an event in itself.
Because every fan that could get an opportunity to go and pay for a ticket to sit during that filming and to watch that would go and do it.
And then Michael Lugo says in the comments, I remember Lugo even texting me this, that he wanted to go last year but lost track of time because it's that time of year, busy time of year, that late spring, you're not quite in early summer, but it's a go April time of year. And even Lugo says he's not a huge fan, but he's trying to go to Mania. It's one of those things. It's a bucket list type of thing. And it's like the Super Bowl. So many of the people who go to the Super Bowl really don't give a rat's ass who wins. They don't care about football, but they want to say they've been to a Super Bowl. WrestleMania is the same thing. And just like you said, Steve, the proximity, the logistics, you could have all your talk shows, you could have the Pat McAfee show, you could have the small local shows and podcasts come in, you could set up Radio Row, the accessibility for the media is right there, just like it was for the Super Bowl. WrestleMania is really just a carbon copy, despite being, the delivery of the event itself much different. How it's all mapped out and how it all benefits Vegas and vice versa is very much the same. So we'll continue to follow that as more developments occur, surface and occur. But it's big the fact that we are sitting here in June of 2025 and we know that in April 2026, Mania will be right back.
Well, and I said what spurred that was the fact that there's empty seats. So now it's like you're going to make an immediate snap reaction. But also, WWE is listening to fans, which is, I have to say, I cannot recall a time that I would go out and say WWE was listening to fans.
It's the Triple H era.
Right?
Yeah.
And they are. Yep. And the difference is, and you know this for a fact that this is happening, because here's what happened. They announced that Ron Killings, R-Truth, was released from WWE. And fans and his gallery of people that he's involved with there, right?
His circle.
They all went back to WWE and were like, we're not okay with this, right?
And guess who just made his quick return to WWE programming?
They brought him back. Now, I think they brought him back too soon. But the way they brought him back made sense.
And now it's funny because literally 2 minutes ago, I was looking down my phone. I got a notification from Twitter of someone within the sports media who I follow. And he says, I'm still not sure if this is a work or a shoot. And now we're talking about that at a time where they've kind of lost some steam as far as the product since Mania in terms of how it's delivered on air. Now, just like that, they give you a big news with Mania coming back, and they give you R-Truth coming back to blow everyone's minds, whether you saw it coming or not. They know how to back themselves out of a corner, to their credit, and Triple H does a good job of just that. Just like the NFL. Notice how every time there's some type of controversy, it quickly gets, eroded or diminished away because Roger Goodell, say what you want about him, always has something up his sleeve. And Brendan Allen says, brought him back with a sale on all his merch too. There you go. I mean, everything's ticking up.
Well, and that's why you do those things. But the bigger part of this was just showing fans that you were paying attention to them. They're going to buy in deeper. They're going to be more engaged, and that's ultimately going to make them a bigger consumer. And whether the consumable is buying the can of soup that has the wrestler on it,
right,
or if it's buying T-shirts off the website or whatever it is, you're going to see that difference. And so, again, I thought it was a genius way to bring it back. However, I do think that it was too quick.
There you go. And I'm with you. And it's a great point because it's so quick, we're not used to it. Like I said, the quickest, whether it be R-Truth or even bringing Vegas back, both of those things are kind of unprecedented. You announce that the guy has a release. He comes back to programming. WrestleMania is a huge success. You announce it as your biggest event of all time in the history of the promotion, and now you come back. But again, it shows there's a calculation. There's an element of long-term planning to it. And anytime that works out in something that's predetermined anyway, it's usually going to work out, especially in WWE, where, as you said, so long, the biggest beef was that they're not listening to their fans. Vince McMahon's out of touch. None of that is an issue now. They still have plenty of their own controversies, but those are isolated controversies, at least at this point in time. So we could go on and on about that. Anytime professional wrestling comes up, combat sports, I sometimes get in a tangent, but I realize we just have some other shop to talk before we wrap things up here. And Steve, you mentioned it when talking about the card markets for the Stanley Cup Finals, when talking about those star players, how the needle moves, if the ship is sailed, if the window is closed. So now that we know, as you mentioned, Aaron Rodgers, we don't have to speculate anymore. We knew it was eventually going to end up with him committing to the Pittsburgh Steelers, showing up to OTAs, signing with them, a major team, not a major market, but a major brand, a major team, enough to where you may forget about the 2-year stint in New York, and I agree with all that completely. But now, here's what I'm going to wonder, because again, you have a Pat Freiermuth, you have, you bring in DK Metcalf, you have to expect, even in instances, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson didn't really play that bad for him last year. A two-pronged question for you. Does this really pay in a division where you have to deal with Baltimore and Cincinnati? Does this really pay dividends for the Steelers in any way, shape, or form? And do we see any type of resurgence? I've asked you and Jimmy about this briefly, but I want to get your take on it now that it's set in stone. Do we see any type of resurgence for him in the black and gold?
Well, no, you'll definitely see an uptick in Aaron Rodgers cards just because he's a Steeler, right? And the Steeler fans,
assumed as much.
The Steeler fans are collectors. They generally are. So you will see that happen. You will see some movement in his stuff because of it, because he did take a downtick. You also had a downtick on Russell Wilson before he went there too, right? So both of those guys saw it. I think Aaron Rodgers has more upside than you did with Wilson.
Right.
And the reason being is because Aaron Rodgers is just so much more decorated, and he's also very polarizing. And that works really well in sports cards.
Yep.
If they hate you or they love you,
they'll come for you.
They will be involved with you, whether it's I don't collect Aaron Rodgers and I just buy it and sell it because, whatever. Or it's I love Aaron Rodgers and I'm getting all of it because he's going to be a Hall of Famer and all this.
Everyone has an opinion on him.
The thing. Whereas like with Russell Wilson, some people were like, he's okay. He's all right.
Yep.
You either like him or you don't.
There's no passive reaction to Aaron Rodgers. It's always there's an emotional investment. So no, go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to say, so with him, you will see an uptick there. I actually think this also benefits the DK Metcalf stuff. Although normally, especially you talk to Jimmy at Game Day, he's always saying buy quarterbacks, buy quarterbacks, buy quarterbacks. If you get into the skill position players, this could be an opportunity that you could see some really fun stuff, especially when you're going to get those 2 matchups a year where you're going to be able to say his name and Jamar Chase in the same
breath. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you do that, that's going to matter. Right? And it does. And, you can look back over time, and whenever you had a big wide receiver who was opposite another big wide receiver, that always became must-watch TV. Is one of these guys going to go off? Is one of these what's going to happen here or whatever it is? So I think that'll be good. It's going to get them a lot more TV time, too. So that's also important.
And obviously you have, again, we mentioned it, the Week 1 match against the Jets. Very smart for the NFL on that standpoint. They know what they're doing. They're going to sell the television product. They always will. And they know that Aaron Rodgers is still a television brand in his own right. He may not be a very good NFL quarterback at this point in time, but he is someone that people people are going to watch. And even if you think on this very show we've alluded to it, how we're tired of talking about him, how this whole offseason charade has gotten bland and tiresome. And that's been the case for Rodgers for years. Going back to when he was on Green Bay and he was playing golf on a TNT broadcast talking to the announcers, and yet, he's playing golf. He's happy to make media appearances, but we don't know if he's going to quarterback the Green Bay Packers. He, lo and behold, did come back to do just that before then leaving after another offseason of all kinds of shenanigans. This is what he does, but at least now we don't have to try to predict who he's going to go to, when or where he's going to go to. We know he's there, and one way or the other, regardless of how it pans out, he will be a Pittsburgh Steeler in 2025.
And we know we get to hear Aaron Rodgers versus Lamar Jackson,
Absolutely.
Aaron Rodgers versus Joe Burrow.
Absolutely.
We know those things are going to happen, and then we've got Aaron Rodgers versus somebody for the Browns.
And say what exactly that's a story in its own right.
It is.
And I love how you bring that up, because given the point where we were in the AFC East the last couple of years, even a few years ago when there was a lot of offseason hype on Tua, Mike McDaniel, and the Dolphins, you always had Buffalo and you always had Miami. And once Rodgers got hurt in that first game on the 2023 season, the Jets became irrelevant, even though they were talented. The Steelers are not going to suffer from the same type of thing. This was a team that was in the playoffs yet again under Mike Tomlin, despite not being very good last year. They were stagnant offensively.
And there's an argument, too, saying that Aaron Rodgers will have probably a lot more say into the playbook.
No doubt.
Than he did with the Jets.
No doubt.
Because he actually talked about how, polarizing his relationship was with front office and management and all this stuff.
It
and
never
everything.
clicked.
And then Mike Tomlin, not only did Mike Tomlin recruit, Mike Tomlin, when he went to do his workout for the Steelers, Mike Tomlin took his workout to him rather than Aaron Rodgers bringing a workout to them. Right.
Big
And
difference.
that it's a huge difference. And it just tells you that that's going to be a guy that's going to get that opportunity. And someone else who's getting an opportunity similar to that, it looks like, is going to be Nick Chubb.
Absolutely. And I asked you just now about Rodgers, right? Goes to a public team, polarizing figure, the legendary player, and a quarterback, no less. Even if he didn't have all those accolades, just the fact he's a quarterback, that would move a needle. But, Steve, so many of our specific position-related conversations surrounding NFL card markets have been interesting on the show, and so much of what I've learned from yourself and Jimmy is how the running back market is gauged. You have a former elite running back who I still think has a lot to offer, even with the injury. When you have someone that talented, he may not be the same player, but the skill doesn't go away. The mobility and the elusiveness may go away, but we have to see how that pans out. Here he goes to an offensive team with a revamped offensive line. We expect C.J. Stroud and the Houston Texans offense to kind of kick back into gear this year. We've had talks about that on the show as well. How big do you think this could be for both the Texans and Nick Chubb? And, of course, I'm sure you'll elaborate on the card market as well.
So it's purely going to be that if it really there's wins there, and two, how that's going, right? If it looks like he's not getting because Joe Mixon is doing so much more, that will be a thing. What I do believe, though, is that this will be marketed, this will be pushed, and I think the NFL finally is going to be able to look at the Texans and say, hey, we have a way to market these guys. And I think what they'll do is they'll come in and they'll treat it like the law firm of Mixon and Chubb.
And I love that.
And they should, and hopefully they do, right? Two, you've got the running backs out there that are making some noise, right? We just had Derrick Henry this week get tempted by Dan Patrick because Dan Patrick said, I'll get you onto a Adam Sandler project if you get 2,000 yards. And Adam Sandler said, I will cast you if you get 2,000 yards. These become newsworthy moments.
Even Barkley, there's rumors that he may not be around for much longer in the league. Now that he has a Super Bowl, he may not have much to play for.
Yeah, who knows? And again, when you're looking at these pieces of news in that world, these are where those bumps come from. I believe Nick Chubb, getting Nick Chubb stuff, buy the short print stuff, buy the rookie autos, buy the rookies, get nice stuff there, and you will see that if he breaks off a few 100-yard runs games in the first, say he has a couple 100-yard games in the first 6 weeks, you will see an uptick in him, especially if Texans are winning. If Texans are losing, expect nothing.
And that's what's so interesting, because we saw the value that Joe Mixon brought to that offense, especially since he was hurt so often last year. It was almost like a week-by-week difference whether or not Joe Mixon was in the lineup. that was often a reflection of how the Houston offense would perform that week. Now you have a complementary piece in the backfield, a former, all-pro caliber type of running back who's known for his power, known for his ability to break away, break arm tackles. Even if the change of direction, the agility for Nick Chubb in the wake of that injury isn't there, it doesn't necessarily need to be when you're complimenting Joe Mixon and an offense that we assume will be a little bit more pass-happy, at least if C.J. Stroud returns to form.
Well, it seems like it would be. I think now they gave themselves an ability to be able to balance that offense a little bit more.
Helped out the offensive
line. To be
line.
honest with you, I think that's what this move is. It's purely just to balance everything out even stronger. And against the teams in their division, look, who controls the clock better in that division than anybody? The Colts.
Yep.
Why have the Colts done
Jonathan
that?
Taylor.
Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah.
So, when you look at that situation, I think that they saw, hey, look, we picked up Joe Mixon I feel like they got him next to nothing. And he was very formidable, went over 1,000 yards this year. And then you turn around and you have a guy like this. I think this is a good opportunity for them. I like that Texans team. I already had the Texans winning the division. I think this is just, this might win another game for them.
Yeah.
These
are
this
the type
could
of things that make
because
differences.
They could run that two-headed monster out there and have a good time with
Right.
it. When you talk about movements and things in the divisions, and I know we could talk NFL forever.
Yeah.
We do need to mention Major League Baseball.
Absolutely.
They put out a very interesting power rankings
I was going to say, I'm
today.
sure by now you pulled it up, and that's a perfect segue because I have one question related to the card marks in baseball that I want to wrap up that directly relates to something that you posted on social media. But before we get to that, because these actually just came out earlier this morning, right? This is news, not breaking news because it's not necessarily a huge shakeup as far as the greater hierarchy, but some of the ticks upward and some of the ticks downward are interesting. Really quick, just to look at it. In fact, Steve, you can actually go ahead and read it.
So I'm going to run this from 10 to 1. I'm going to run through it, and I'll give some reaction.
And I have it pulled up as well, so I already know this, but this is for the audience who may not know.
The Cardinals have gone from 8th to 10th. This is according to MLB.com's power rankings. Giants from 10 to 9, so you just flip-flop the spot. Astros 13 to 8. That's a pretty big jump, 5-game jump, or five position jump for a team that I'm still not sold their pitching's good
Neither
enough.
am
But
I.
neither that. Padres stayed sat at 7, sitting right there. The Phillies fell to 6 from 4, which means you had some movement up top, and this is where it gets interesting. At number 5, it is the Dodgers.
Yes.
The Dodgers are moved from 2 to 5.
They bumped.
The Yankees are moved from 6 to 4. So now you're putting the Yankees in front of the Dodgers.
After the Yankees just lost the series in
and
Boston.
they got boat raced in one of those games.
Yeah, that's what's crazy. The Yankees in the last 2 weeks, even though they straddled it with a nice series win over Cleveland, we saw a rough series outcome against the Dodgers and then against Boston at home.
Now you have the Mets moved up to 3, which to me is very, very suspect because, again, I don't think that team's really played in unison yet.
Nope. Soto hasn't gotten going, really. Not in true form like we expected.
But again, you have a guy that's standing out there in Francisco Lindor.
Yeah.
He has been doing some things, and even though he's got the broken toe, he's been able to get through that.
Yeah.
And then the next two, and look, I absolutely love number 2's story in the Cubs. I absolutely love the Cubs here. I don't think they're the second best team in baseball.
No, I'm with you.
I don't know that they're the 8th best team in baseball, to be honest with you. Right now, if I took and I made these matchups for you, and I said you have, let's call it a 3-game series and everyone's fresh. You have the Cubs versus, okay, tell me who you take.
Okay.
Cubs versus Yankees.
Yanks.
Cubs versus Dodgers.
Dodgers.
Cubs versus Padres.
Padres.
Cubs versus, let's throw out, I'd argue the Giants here.
That one's interesting. I'd have to think about that.
Right?
One.
That one's tough.
You can
right?
have a debate.
But that's a coin flip,
Yes.
in my opinion. That is not a...
No, not at all.
You're not going, I'm taking the Cubs
Not
here.
at all. It's not a sure thing.
Now,
Not at
we
all.
haven't even talked about
The
those
Mets, the
American
Phillies,
League teams.
and even some of the other
Let's
National
go.
League teams.
Mets. We
No.
take the Mets.
No, yeah,
Right?
I would take the Mets.
Phillies.
Yeah, not the Cubs.
You're going to take the Phillies
Yep.
against them. So that right there is 7 teams.
It's a good
Okay?
point.
So to me, it's just...
Detroit in the American.
It's just what you saw. And Detroit is sitting at number 1.
And do you think they deserve that?
Well, I want to go back to that White Sox team that won the last time the White Sox won a World Series.
02, right?
They
Yeah.
won it with a 4-headed monster. They had 4 complete games thrown. They absolutely dominated from the pitching side.
Yep.
And so to me, that's exactly what you're looking at here in the situation you're looking at here.
You can't get on base against them.
You cannot get on base against them. And Tarek Skubal, I said it and I put it on social media the other day.
Yep.
This guy is a true generational player.
And that was going to be my question that wrapped it all up. You beat me to it perfect. As we segue into the pitching and the emphasis of how it's affecting teams like Detroit, can we just talk about for a minute, because you alluded to this on social media. And again, we could go on and nitpick the power rankings. It's still interesting to say, because as we wrap that up, I love the fact you bring that up, because I think the Cubs are worthy of the praise and the coverage they're getting, right? Major market, a team that's iconic within the baseball culture, and a team whose run differential is really that stark, and a team, when they get going, is still probably the best offense in baseball. But ultimately, when you look at the road ahead, it's about who they're going to be matched up against. And as we just kind of concluded, nothing's set in stone, but I feel confident, not just I'd feel confident betting the Padres, the Yankees, the Mets, the Phillies, all these teams against them at this point in time, because it's just kind of where they are. They could produce and perform great. It doesn't mean they are necessarily a better team, and that's what makes power rankings so interesting.
Well, and again, we talk about what have you done for me lately, right? And this Tigers thing is, look, they don't give up runs.
No.
You don't score against them.
And
Skubal has, this is crazy thing to say.
Yes.
He has 89 strikeouts and 3 walks in his last 7 games.
And that leads me to my final question as we wrap things up here, because you kind of alluded to this. Is there a reason? Because I get it, Pittsburgh, big sports market, but so is Detroit. And Detroit's actually a bigger market than Pittsburgh is. I'm not going to say they care about their baseball more. That could be debated in terms of Pirates and Tigers fans and all that. But why is Skeens getting so much praise that Skubal isn't? I'm not saying Skeens isn't worthy.
We got one full year prior to him coming to Major League Baseball.
So it's sample size.
Where he played in college and was throwing 102 miles an hour. And we got all this fanfare, and his girlfriend was out at all of those things.
Yep.
And if you want to know about getting popular, why don't you go talk to Travis Kelce? Because
who you date
Travis
matters.
Kelce is now one of the top sports talk shows in the world, if not arguably the biggest, because he is dating Taylor Swift.
He's more popular now than he was in the prime of his career. Literally, NFL
100%.
circles were talking nothing about is Travis Kelce going into 2023. Everyone was talking about and pondering the thought, if Travis Kelce's prime, if his run as a dominant tight end, as a game-changing tight end, was over.
They were talking retirement.
Exactly. He just won the Super Bowl. And now we don't even care. Now we're just more curious, maybe not us, but the collective is more curious to see how his personal life is going to map out. So it's a great observation. And again, the Livy Dunn factor is big.
And that's a real X factor. And that's why I jokingly said, and look, I'm sorry if Skubal's got, someone else.
Right.
But, I would spark up a conversation with Caitlin Clark. I'm just saying it might be good for the brand. I'll tell you, it was good for Halliburton's brand to go over and give a little high five. But I'm just telling you right now.
We love power couples. It's so true.
So, that's what I'm saying is that's what it needs. But this dude, I'm telling you now, this is a dude. I love baseball. If you know me, you know how nerdy I can get with baseball and how deep I can get into stuff and how I pay attention to the dumbest things, right?
Nuanced.
I've watched this guy over the last 2 years, and I've sat there and continued to say, I don't understand why the card market does not reflect this dude.
And that's going to be my ultimate takeaway here from this, because it's kind of like me. I was posting this past weekend about Merab Dvalishvili. I've watched thousands of fights, have formed opinions and covered thousands of fights, have previewed and recapped thousands of fights. If I'm posting about it on social media, it's because I have a strong take on it. Whether or not you want to do something with that take, whether you want to push back, agree with it, I don't care. But I just feel the need to get it off my chest and get it out there. For you to kind of put that on your Instagram and Facebook story to emphasize what Skubal is doing is every bit, if not more impressive than Skeens, is a reflection of you as a baseball fanatic and how adamant you are about this. So even if, as you say, the optics around and the sample size around Skeens may be greater than that of Skubal, what you get on the bump, on the hill, is very much on par, and in some cases it may be superior for the Tiger.
And I'll tell you, and this is just the best way, in my opinion, to look at this. If you're a sports card collector and you open a box of product today and you pull a 1 of 1 of Paul Skeens, you instantly feel that you have a multi-thousands-dollar card. In fact, I would argue that almost any product, you would feel like you have at least a $5,000 card. At least. That's just my guesstimate is what I believe. I just looked this up because I had to see. June 6th, a Bowman Chrome Scuba Scouts Top 100, 1 of 1, and it is graded. It is graded a PSA 9, sold for $999. The Topps Chrome Black 2025 just sold for $300. The 1 of 1 Topps Triple Thread, it's a triple patch auto, just sold for $849, and that's for the 2021, right? So when you go down this, I go down this list, there's one card over $1,000 in the first 7 that I see of 1 of 1s for Tarek Skubal. Wow. And I promise, do yourself a favor, go onto eBay, go to the sold listings, look up the 1 of 1s on Paul Skeens. You might have to look other places because they've been sold in auction places like Pristine and Heritage and on Fanatics Collect. Those platforms have sold these cards for, think of this as you just had that 1 of 1 Major League patch debut, and I understand it's a debut patch and it's got specialty to it. That sold for an obscene amount of money.
Tells you something. Right?
And this guy's 1 of 1s are selling under $1,000. Like, it blows my mind that this guy. Now, by the end of the year, do I expect these numbers to hold? Absolutely not. I truly believe this is the one time with a pitcher, and I don't tell you to buy pitchers often. Go buy Tarek Skubal. Go buy rookie autos. Go buy yourself some products. Get that stuff rolling. Make it happen. You're set.
From the source himself, and those are the type of insights you get on the show. Even when Jimmy's not here, Steve will have us covered. And again, go catch Jimmy at the North location for Game Day?
He ends up Buffalo and Lake Mead today. Stop by, say hello.
Go. And be sure to stop by the new location, the Rainbow 215 Southwest location, right? We know how filled out Spring Valley and the South Summerlin part of town is. Well, that is directly in your vicinity. Michael Lugo checked it out this weekend. He loved it. He's now, a presence at both shops. And, of course, you could always check out One of Us Comics as well on the Game Day front there. And, of course, everything on the pop culture front. And in terms of that pop culture front, you get some great analysis, some great conversation, and some great regarding everything in that realm as well every week on Who the F is Frank right here on the Go Live Vegas Network. Steve, anything excited for this week's installment that we should count on?
Yes, so David Faustino.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. That is a buddy from my Married with Children, right?
Yep, Bud, baby. Bud Bundy.
Yep. Bud Bundy is going to be with us. He joins us in studio, or he joins us via video call.
Right.
But he will be with us, and that will drop tomorrow, 4 o'clock. You'll be able to check it out. So David Faustino, we will be chatting with him and talking about what's going on, as he has a meet and greet coming up at Pocos Perros Locos in East LA.
Love it.
And that is being hosted with his Funko Pops, and you can come out and you can get a signature from him and meet him and everything. But he will be on the show with us this week, so we're really excited about that.
That's awesome. That should be a blast. And again, go check out One of Us Comics. Check out that pod, Who the F is Frank. Whether it be any of our pods, whether our live shows, our archive podcasts, audio, video, whatever it may be, YouTube, Spotify, Facebook, all social media. We should have the Go Live Vegas Radio app up and running again. I think we're going to be back on Roku TV. Plenty to be excited about as far as how to find us, where to find us, and what type of shows you can find as well. So be sure to check out that show. Go ahead.
I glanced at that real quick. That was yesterday.
Yeah.
That appearance was yesterday.
Oh, it's all good.
He just appeared.
It's all good. Yeah. I was going to say, it stands the same. It's all the same. But either way, check that out.
I can read.
Yeah, right. Like, follow, subscribe to us. It was a fun show today. Again, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. Jimmy should be back in the mix next week. He's a busy man. We understand it. But again, hopefully business is well. And again, go check out that new shop, their Southwest location, for Game Day Sports Cars. So for Brett, for Steve, for Aaron, for the whole gang, we thank you. We appreciate you. We'll have plenty more to talk next week when we do it all again. NHL, NBA, Stanley Cup Finals, NBA Finals. It's a great time of the year in the world of sports, and we'll be here to keep track of all of it on the Game Day Huddle. We'll catch you next time.